At what point did you start Ardent Sage, your consulting firm? Was that shortly after that?
It was. So my colleague who was the chief creative officer at Lenhart Group became Lenhart Fitch and then Fitch. And he and I decided to let's just do this together and try something on our own and basically assemble creative teams per project that we would win. And Port of Seattle ended up being our first big one. And we had so much fun. It was really, really cool to do. And it wasn't very long before founding it and starting everything that out of the blue, I had a cardiac arrest.
Hmm.
So it was a bit of a shock. And I would not have anticipated that after resting, I would end up having such a serious health issue. But in some ways, I think my body got the care it needed because I had rested. And I am pretty humble to think and uncomfortable to think about had I not quit and had the same thing happen, I would have been pretty unhealthy, likely on a plane somewhere. It's a good chance I wouldn't have made it.
Wow. Well, take me back, if you're comfortable, Sue, to that day in 2007 when you literally died, right?
Yep. So I was in my little houseboat and I was on the phone and was rushing out the door before a Rotary meeting. I was on my way to our noon Rotary meeting. Ran out the door, hopped in my car, was driving up the road. And just before I got on the highway at that intersection, I had a cardiac arrest completely out of the blue. I had no idea I had any heart issues. And essentially, what happens is an electrical current goes wonky in my heart and caused my heart to just tremble and it stops beating essentially. So, had no one intervened, I would have died right there. So, I caused a car accident and there were about 3 or 4 cars involved and a bunch of people standing around. And because it was a car accident, they were really hesitant to do anything. A nurse who happened to have the day off, it was a surprise day off for her. She was just on her way to get a cup of coffee at Starbucks down the street. She saw what was going on, pulled over, and she was the one that got out of her car, saw that I wasn't breathing, found I didn't have a pulse, and just started rallying everybody. She's dead. We got to get her out of here and start doing CPR. Pulled me from the car, and she's on the ground with me, giving me CPR. She and a postman who also was there, who also knew CPR, they traded off for 8 minutes, keeping me alive until the medics came.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you have any memory of that day?
I have no memory of that day, but every time I talk about it and every time I think about it, I get chills. And I don't think that will ever stop. It is so there's something in my being that has a recollection of how profound it was. But I think our minds protect us and strip our memories
Hmm.
of the actual day. I have memories the day before and I have memories of the time after, but I was unconscious for about 36 hours in a coma and then woke, thankfully, with my neurological mostly intact, I think.
Wow.
They were pretty sure I was brain dead when I came in.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
You know, Sue, a lot of us go through much less traumatic events that cause us to reevaluate life. And I'm just curious, when you have something as profound as that happen to you, what the result was in terms of how you look at life and
Yeah.
how you think, and just on a daily basis.
It makes me cry, Mark.
Oh,
Like happy tears. I think that the most profound things make us cry. Like, even you asking that question, I just think I would never give up what I went through. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, and yet I wouldn't give it up because it's a threshold that it shakes out everything in your life, and anything that doesn't matter is gone, and everything that does matter glows. And some days I forget and get swept up into things, but most days the things that matter glow. And I I get wrapped around the axle around something. It doesn't take very long to get back and say, wow, why would I worry about this when I've had this experience of how humans care for one another, and I couldn't have planned anything about that day. And yet, when I sit down and count the things that came together for me, it it is extraordinary. And I don't think it was special because it was me. It was special because of everything around me that came together as provision. So it's, yes, it's pretty powerful, and I keep learning from it.
Yeah. It seems like I've known you mostly after that incident, I think.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, Sue, that one thing that I just love about you is that you do show up with this vibrance and this energy that is palpable. That you, it's like whenever we run into you, your friends, it's like we ask ourselves, doesn't she ever have a bad day? Because you just are so present and that energy is so clear in how it radiates through you. And I appreciate you sharing that, Sue. But I think that that lesson of letting the crap go and appreciating the real stuff in our lives that gives us meaning and that we care about, that's I don't think that lesson can be said too many times. Um,
Thank you, Mark.
yeah. Oh my gosh. I want to talk a little bit about your music because
Yeah.
you mentioned it earlier. And for those of you who don't know, Sue is an amazing jazz singer. Were you a little kid that ran around the house singing, or how did that come about, Sue?
That is funny. You just drew up a whole bunch of memories. I loved music, and I had so much fun as a kid mimicking artists. And I didn't just mimic artists that, like, Karen Carpenter was one of them because our range is
Oh,
exactly the
yeah.
same. So that was super fun. But I mimicked Kenny Rogers and John Denver and Helen Reddy. I mean, all these, and I learned basically how to appreciate music by admiring musicians, basically.
Mhm.
And I met my match trying to mimic Aretha Franklin. I
Oh,
was like, dang, she's something else. So it just kind of planted a seed in me. And yet I never did it publicly until I was a senior in high school, and I just wanted to try things. So I tried sports I hadn't tried. I tried just all sorts of different things. And I tried out for a musical. And I thought, I'll just, who knows? I ended up getting one of the parts where I had 3 solos, and I thought I was gonna throw up. I was so freaked out because I had never sung in public, and it was fun. It wasn't awesome, and my sister still has the VHS tape and threatens me with it. She
that's
she's like, "I'm gonna
awesome.
play that for your friends if you're not nice to me." But I ended up in college doing some studying of music, and then shortly after college started performing with a little jazz trio and have loved it ever since.
Yeah. Well, you're so good. Maybe we can insert a little clip of your music to wrap up the show. We'll work on
That's
that
that sounds
in a little
fun.
bit. I
Though
think what
ideally we would start our own band because the listeners don't realize you're a drummer
I
and a good one.
love drumming. Yeah. I maybe we can collaborate sometime.
We need to.
That would be fun.
We
Um
need to.
I think that I think music can teach us a lot about life if we pay attention to it. And
Yeah.
I was so touched when recently you connected me with your voice teacher and you actually paid for my first lesson with her. And what I realized is that your breath supports everything
Yes.
and that all you have is that moment,
Yeah.
which kind of goes back to the overarching, theme of this. And I'd love to know, as a jazz performer, and you perform at all the big venues in Seattle, what things translate from being a jazz performer to just showing up in life and doing well in life? What are some of the parallels that you've discovered?
Oh, we could go on for hours on that one. So first of all, I will say Awilda has been just such a mentor and friend to me over
Mhm.
all so many years. And she knew me before my cardiac arrest and after. And she visited me in the hospital after the cardiac arrest. And everybody else who had come was like, "Oh, Sue, I'm so sorry. I mean, how are you doing?" Very gentle. She walked in and she's 80 now, so I can't remember. Anyway, she's this gorgeous Puerto Rican woman who was an opera singer all across the world. She came into the room, she said, "Sue, I am so excited for you. This opening of your heart is going to be exactly what you need to just share so generously with the world everything you've got to give. We are going to have so much fun." And she turned around and walked out. And I just smiled and thought, oh, she's so special. And she's right. It was, I think for so long I had guarded and I was careful and I was rushed. I was always rushed. And that compresses everything. And if you think of music and if you're rushing, who wants to listen to that? If you're just spitting out words and you haven't taken the time to connect with them, who's going to be moved by that?
Wow.
If you're entering into a performance and you haven't done your work and you're asking the audience to bear with you, they're going to be annoyed. But if you've done your work, you show up, you pour everything out, and you make a mistake, they are so gracious. So it's these really, I'll give you an example. I've actually come to my lessons with her and I've said, I have to sing them. I'm singing the national anthem at I think it was at a hockey game, one of the Thunderbirds game or something. I'm singing the national anthem and I'm just having a hard time connecting with it. And she smiled and she said, okay, because it's not a very moving song. And I said, okay, so I don't know why. She said, maybe you just haven't taken some time with the words. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe. So she said, will you just say the words to me? Just say them right now. So I started, I said, oh, say, can you see? Literally couldn't get past it. I
Oh,
burst into tears.
right.
And I'm like, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? And I was like, every planet, every person in the universe who had ever sung or stated that song or lived the life that it spoke about connected with me in that moment. And I sobbed. And I thought, and she said, that's why you were having a hard time connecting, because you were afraid of the intensity of your own emotions around the song. And I was like, wow.